I'm going to be creating a flower using watercolor and masking fluid. I start off by drawing using just a regular pencil. I created a circle to be able to give me the shape of a flower, and then I add a stem and some leaves. Once I have it completely drawn, then I'm going to roll over it with a kneaded eraser that's going to lighten the lines of my drawing. Then I'm going to use a metal stylus to apply the masking fluid. A metal stylus is what you're supposed to use, and it's easier to apply it, and it also prevents it from getting messed up. If you were to use a paintbrush, it would ruin the paintbrush. You could also use a metal dip pen, like an ink pen, to do this as well, and it wouldn't mess that up. However, the stylus is the easiest and the best tool for this application, so that's what we're going to be using. I'm going to cover up all of my lines that I have drawn and anywhere that I want my paper to stay white and fresh and crisp. Once this is completely dry, I can paint around it, and it's going to create a barrier so that the watercolor doesn't cross that barrier, and it's going to keep my paper nice and white and crisp and clean. This masking fluid takes about 15 to 20 minutes to dry, and so after this 15 minutes is up, I made sure that it was dry, and then I started mixing some watercolor by adding water to a well. Typically, I create a separate well of water, but this watercolor cake is almost completely out, so I just create it directly in that watercolor circle cake. Then I apply a yellow on the inside of my flower, which then I'm going to add a second color into it later, allow those to mix and really create a soft transition of color, which is something that watercolor does well. And so I want you to try that as well. Try to add two colors into your petals. And once that completely dries, then you can add anything else on top, like a pen. So I'm going to add this yellow, and then I'm come back in with an orange and a red to be able to add a little bit of interest to it. And then you can see that wherever the masking fluid is, it's preventing the watercolor from touching the paper. I'm going to also paint my leaves, and then I'll paint my background around this, and that masking fluid creates that barrier between each of these colors so that they don't mix. If you want to be extra careful and safe, you can let these dry before you add any color next to them. That's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to wait about 10 to 15 minutes, let those dry a little bit before I add my background. Now I'm adding my blue background. Know that these colors do dry lighter and softer than they're applied. So I'm going to keep it nice and wet, trying to move around quickly. And also I'm going to kind of tilt my board so that it runs into all of the areas, trying to make it nice and smooth. And then if it puddles up anywhere, you can use a dry brush to soak up that puddle of water and smooth it out so that it doesn't add extra pigment in any one area of it. Once the watercolor has enough time to completely dry, which typically takes a little bit more than an hour to completely dry, then we can take off the masking fluid. So we're going to be doing this the next day, so we'll know that ours is dry. You just kind of rub it with your finger and it'll start to come up, and then you can peel it up. Or you can use this special watercolor brush, which has this flat side to it, to be able to rub off some of that masking fluid. And then you can see here, once it's come up a little bit, you can kind of peel it off and it sticks to itself, and it'll just pull right off. You can do a few different things with that watercolor brush, like make indentions into the paper, and the watercolor will seep into those lines, but we're going to use it for this purpose today. Most of us, though, I just want you to use your finger, get it started, and then peel it off everywhere that you can, and that'll work just fine for this project. When I was painting, I accidentally dropped a little bit of the green right in the middle of my petal. If you also make a mistake like this, Know that it's not the end of the world. I can get the paper really wet and I can kind of scrub it off using the brush lightly. You can rip your paper doing this, so you gotta be soft with it and you can't scrub too much. But you can get a lot of that color off by just kind of scrubbing it out, and then you can reactivate some of the yellow paint around it and work it back into it. I decided that I wanted a second color to go on top of this, so I'm going to layer another red and purple on top of this yellow to kind of give it a deeper color to it, deeper look. Then I'm gonna finish this off once it's completely dry. I'm gonna finish this off by adding a gel pen on top. And I kind of keep it nice and loose and quick, and it doesn't have to stay inside the watercolor lines or the watercolor shapes. This kind of adds a fun, loose look to it. I'm just kind of outlining everything, adding a little bit more interest to it. Once you're finished with this, we'll take the tape off. It's kind of a satisfying thing to do. As you take the tape off, you want to make sure to find the top layer of tape, and then you want to peel off the top layer first, whatever layer of tape is on the very top, and you want to peel it back onto itself and away from the center of the artwork. That way, if any of the paper starts to rip up, it'll rip away from the center of the artwork and towards the edge of the paper where it's not as important.